25 of 19, right?
Correct.
Charles, and that would be Charles Vallow, right?
Correct.
Cosigns for Tylee to get a Jeep. And Tylee begins making monthly payments. Okay. Is that fair in the squares I've represented there?
That's correct, yes.
And then you put down that Charles Vallow dies on 7/11/19, right?
Correct.
So what I'm having some difficulty with is this is Tylee's financial timeline, right?
Correct. That's what it's labeled, sir.
And it's talking about Tylee's, how she's spending her money and the manner in which she's spending the money, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Chad Daybell has nothing to do with any of the transactions above, right?
Not on this, no.
Okay. And the only reference to Chad Daybell is you put, well, when they met, right?
Correct.
And then you put that Charles Vallow dies, right?
Yes.
You're not trying to imply that because of financial reasons in this particular exhibit, Chad Daybell had anything to do with the death of Charles Vallow, are you?
What I'm implying on this specific timeline, sir, was where Tylee's funds were going to come from and then what she spent them on. This is specifically to show on Tylee's spending habits, sir.
And I don't want to put an answer in your mouth to testify, but that wasn't really my question.
No, because that's not the reason that I built this timeline.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Oh, you sneak up behind me there. Is that where you went? There was a discussion on one of your exhibits where you talked about Lori mentioning to Chad about receiving a $4,000 payment. Do you remember that?
I do.
What exhibit was that again?
That's noted on a couple. It was on the one that you just handed back.
Okay. And then on the other one, it
would have been regarding JJ as well.
I'm just going to say both of you are kind of getting into a habit of talking over each other. Please try to avoid that.
And if I could have exhibit
Mr. Pryor, you just talked right over me when I was telling
sorry,
you, please not do that. Thank you.
And if I could have exhibit 114, Judge. Thank you. Judge, if I can publish this.
You may.
Oops. This is an exercise here. Okay. Maybe not. Hopefully you can read that about the 4,000 month in insurance from there. So on this particular chart, this was JJ's financials?
This would have been a timeline regarding JJ's or transaction regarding JJ.
Okay, so the financial transaction regarding JJ, again, you put on there that Chad Daybell and Lori meet, right?
I did.
And then a box right next to it, again, you put down that Charles Vallow dies.
Correct.
Okay. And then on 7/18, after Charles Vallow's death, it says something about Lori texting Chad about receiving $400 a month in Social Security, but nothing from the insurance company.
That is correct. It's 4,000, not 400.
4,000. I'm sorry. Thank you. And at this point, was there any other indication in your investigation that they ever talked prior to that time about any financial matters like Social Security or insurance?
Not that I can recall at this time, sir.
Okay. And this text was in the form of expressing her displeasure about the fact that this is what she discovered after Charles's death, right?
It could be said that way, sir.
Okay. And then we go on to, well, before I go there, there was nothing to indicate that Chad Daybell had any financial interest in that Social Security or insurance at that point on 7/18 of 2019, correct?
I don't know of a response regarding that.
Okay. You didn't find anything that showed that Chad had any financial link to any of those accounts, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then Lori posts a dog for sale on 8/9 of 19, right?
Yes.
And then on 8/12, she names Colby Ryan the insurance beneficiary on her life policy.
Yes.
Okay. Now, at that point, at least we are aware that her and Chad are involved in a relationship of some kind, right?
I think that's fair to say.
And yet at that point, she names as a beneficiary on her life insurance policy and Colby Ryan's her son, right?
Yes.
With the deceased Joseph Ryan?
I believe so.
Okay, so she puts an insurance policy on her name, not Chad's at that point, or puts it on Colby's name, not Chad's, for 100% of the beneficiary, right?
Correct.
And then she also previously, we talked towards the end of your testimony about the fact that she made numerous payments to Colby Ryan, right?
Correct.
And that was after, well after the last known sign of life of JJ Vallow, correct?
Yes.
So she was giving, at least in some indication, money to Colby Ryan. And on 8/12 of 19, after Charles Vallow dies, she puts Colby Ryan on her insurance policy. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, then on 8/14, she applies for an apartment in Rexburg. And at that point, she's receiving a bit of money, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then she moves to Rexburg on 9/1. This is going to be a task. Bear with me, please.
All right.
I'm a lawyer, not a audiovisual person. But in any event, then we move on. She moves to Rexburg. And at this point, there's still no financial link between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow, correct?
Correct.
And then on 9/8/19, when there's a last known sign of regarding Tylee Ryan on 9/8 of 19, there's still no financial link between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow of any kind. Is that correct?
There are no accounts with them associating funds at this time.
And then the prosecutor's assertion that the last known sign of life with JJ Vallow was on 9/22/19. Again, there were no accounts that were mingled at that point, correct?
Correct.
And there was nothing financially showing them linked in any way, correct?
Correct.
And then after the fact that when they got married, again, there was no joint accounts to your knowledge, correct?
Correct.
Not sure how well I would do that. Now, on one of your exhibits, you talked something about a south-southwest wind. Remember
did.
that?
I do.
Okay. And that was part of the email searching that you did as a result of was that part of Tylee's?
Yes, that would have been on Tylee, sir.
Okay. And as far as financial, I found that a little unusual that you would include a Google search for the wind direction on Tylee's financial.
Sure.
Okay. That's not something of the ordinary, right?
Not necessarily, sir.
Okay. But you didn't include the emails after that that talked about Mr. Daybell burning some tree lip.
I didn't find that. sir.
Objection, that's a fact, not in evidence.
Sustained. There wasn't any mention of that.
Did you have any occasion to review the emails and when you prepared all of this timeline?
I was told about it, yes.
Okay.
That one I was told about.
Okay. And that's not a fact of significance. The fact that there was the fact that you checked the wind isn't really relevant to Tylee's financial in terms of how the money was spent, right?
Not regard, excuse me. It's not regarding the financial transactions,
Okay.
no.
So when we're talking about Tylee's financial, the wind direction really isn't relevant to that issue, correct?
Not to that, no.
Okay. And then, so why wouldn't you mention the fact that Mr. Daybell, if the wind issue wasn't relevant to that, why wouldn't you mention the fact that Mr. Daybell sent a text message to his wife saying that he was burning limbs the next morning, the following morning?
Because I didn't discover that, sir.
Okay, fair enough. Now, as part of this timeline, you talked about the financial situation of JJ, Lori, and Tylee. And in none of these timelines, I see a situation or a box where it talks about Lori sort of being out of the picture for a time during these range of events. Were you aware that Lori Vallow had temporarily relocated by herself to Hawaii around February 1st of 2019?
There are transactions that support that. She was coming and going from Arizona to Hawaii, yes.
Well, coming and going, or was she staying in Hawaii for 2
I couldn't
months?
prove that she relocated.
Okay. But you can show that she was in Hawaii at least out around the 1st of February, correct?
Yes, and so was Tylee.
And from the whole time?
Both of them came and went.
Okay. And in 2019 also till about the end of March. Would that be consistent with what you found as well?
I would say there's transactions that support that.
Okay. Okay. And then in addition, during that time, did you have any indication of any transactions relating to JJ as to where he was during that time?
I'd have to review. I can't say right now.
Would it surprise you to learn that at about the same time frame of February 1st till the end of March that JJ Vallow was predominantly with Charles Vallow?
He was his father, so it wouldn't surprise me, no.
Okay. Okay. Would that have any impact? Would you be able to determine whether that being separated and the receiver of those benefits being in another part of the country and the child being with the father when the parties are separated, would that cause any financial troubles for Ms. Vallow?
What benefits are you speaking of, sir?
As Social Security?
Tylee was the only one receiving Social Security at that time.
On February 1st of 2019?
Correct. Tylee was the only receiving it.
Oh, I'm sorry. There were other benefits that as a result of the death of Joseph. No, I'm sorry. You're right. That's correct. I stand corrected. Excuse me. Now, we talked a little bit on Exhibit 116, or you did, about a life insurance situation with Tammy Daybell, correct?
I did.
Okay, and on 116, you talked about the map. I think it was Map Life is what you talked about, right?
There were two. There was Life Map and Primerica.
Okay. Do you have a recollection of when the initial life insurance policy with Tammy Daybell was put into place?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Were you aware that that policy was placed, one of the $300,000 policy was put in place back in approximately 2002?
It wouldn't surprise me.
Okay, but you don't have a recollection of that?
Not off the top of my head right now.
And you don't remember that fact, doesn't jar any memory of that fact, correct?
Not right now, no.
Okay. But it wouldn't surprise you, but that's the case, correct?
No, she did have life insurance, correct.
Prior to. Right. And then the amount of life insurance, other than the life insurance from back in 2002 that she had, What about the life map? What are we talking about there?
You're talking specifically to
Specifically,
the
yes.
increase on 9/8?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so initially she had a base because of the employment at the part-time employment, I guess, as a librarian,
Mhm.
right?
Correct.
I think that's what it was. So when you start the employment, you get an initial base of about 50,000, right?
That's what it was in the beginning.
Okay, so the insurance was at 50,000, and then on 9/8 of 2019, Tammy increased that to what?
To 130.
Okay, so the increase went up 80,000.
Correct.
So initially, before Tammy started employment with the school, her insurance was 300,000,
There was 300,000 before, and then before she started school.
and
Like
that
you
was
stated.
from some time ago, correct?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. Then she started at the school, and she had to have worked there for about a year before she was eligible to increase the insurance, correct?
It was a year or two. Yes.
A year or two.
Mhm.
And
I don't know what it was per the rule, but I know it's at least a year, maybe more.
you have to put a probationary period in. You don't automatically get that insurance, right?
Correct.
And that's a financial decision made by the school district, and I would anticipate, right?
That's, yeah, above me.
So then after a year, she can apply for an increase in that insurance from the total of 350 and add an additional $80,000 onto that. Right?
Yeah,
Okay. And they elected to do that, correct?
they did.
Okay. And we don't know who elected to increase that insurance, correct? You weren't part of the family at that point.
I wasn't there.
Okay. And what I find interesting is that typically the school year would start the beginning of September for most school districts.
Most.
Yeah. And that's usually the time when the school districts say, this is your opportunity to elect whether you want to increase your insurance or not increase your insurance, correct?
Yes.
So it's not inconsistent that during the school year, just before the start of the school year, as a librarian or a teacher in that school district, the insurance is elected to go up after she served her 1-year probationary period, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, you talked about on exhibit 776 and 774. You talked about Spring Creek and the $10,000 investment.
Mhm.
And that was money that was put in to Spring Creek. And you know what Spring Creek is, right?
Chad's book company. Yes.
And it wasn't just Chad's book company, was it? It was also Tammy's.
It would have
correct?
been Tammy's too.
It was both of theirs. So we could say that it was Tammy's book company, right?
Yes.
Or we could say it was Chad's book company, right?
Chad and Tammy.
Or what we should say is that it's Tammy and Chad's book company, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then addition, there was some money that was $8,000 payments to each of the children, correct?
The 3 older children. Yes.
Right. And then a short time after that, there was 2 vehicles, a minivan and then a black Dodge Dakota that Chad gave to each of the daughters as well, correct?
That actually took place prior. So the transfers took place on 6/9.
You're right.
The vehicles were given to the daughters on 3/8.
Right. And subsequent to that, the vehicles were given to the daughters. So now you were aware that, well, we'll move on from that. Lastly, what I want to talk to you about is the malachite rings.
Hmm.
Okay. You made a comment that they were returned. I mean, it was canceled.
Though that transaction, that one specifically was canceled. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Now, did you look into the size of the wedding rings in that it showed it up on the screen, the size of the wedding rings?
Well, it said 8 millimeters, but that's the width, not the size.
Okay. Okay. And thank you for clarifying that, because that was one of my questions. Thank you. Were you aware that shortly after August 15th of 2009, Alex Cox had been proposing marriage to Zuluma Pastenes?
I don't know the date of
Say it's
that.
facts, not in the record.
I didn't ask him whether it was facts. I asked him whether he's aware, Judge.
Overruled.
Okay. Were you aware that shortly after that time, Alex Cox had proposed marriage to Zuluma Pastenes?
I know Alex and Zulema got married. I don't know when the proposal took place.
Okay. And then were you aware that also at the same time, Melanie Boudreau was contemplating the same thing, a marriage, shortly after that time as well? Were you aware of that?
No,
Okay. Okay. But you are aware that there's no indication through emails, text message, or otherwise that Chad Daybell was intending to marry Lori Vallow at that point. Is that right?
in August, the wedding, no, there was nothing to implicate a wedding in August that I knew of.
Or even a proposal for marriage at that point, correct?
Not that I can verify.
Yeah. Judge, that's all I have. Thank you, Your Honor. I appreciate it.
All right. Mr. Wood, redirect.
Mr. Douglas, we were just talking about rings. Have you ever seen pictures of Chad and Lori's wedding?
I have.
What kind of rings are they wearing?
They're malachite rings.
Defense counsel asked you about why you put on the search for the south-southwest wind.
Mhm.
Earlier, you testified that as a forensic accountant, you look into factors outside just of the finances in a case. Is that correct?
Yes,
And when you came onto this case, it was a missing children case. Is that correct?
that is correct.
And so, and defense counsel asked you about a text message Chad sent about burning limbs.
Correct.
And do you know what date that message was sent?
I believe that took place the day after on 9/9.
And what was, pursuant to your investigation, what was the last known sighting of Tyler Ryan?
The last no sighting is 9/8.
Defense counsel asked you about the text message between Lori and Chad about the $4,000 in Social Security.
Correct.
So Mr. Daybell was aware that Lori was receiving at least $4,000 at that point in Social
At least
Security.
4,000.
Right. You testified that there's no joint account of Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow.
Correct.
Did they live together at any point?
Yes.
Was that in Hawaii?
In Hawaii, yes.
And just finally, defense counsel asked you about, I'm going to call them burner phones that Mr. Daybell purchased. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
And he asked you if that would be a good way to hide an affair.
That is correct.
Well, would that be a good way to hide a crime?
Yes, in my experience.
So in your experience as a forensic accountant, do you see people engaged in criminal activity purchasing burner phones often?
Yes.
And so if someone was having an affair and then the mistress's husband dies, and then your wife dies, and you marry that woman 10 days later, and then the next year 2 dead children are found on your property, are those the type of events that might lead someone to buy multiple burner phones?
It could.
No other questions, Your Honor.
All right. Go ahead. You can recross on that limited scope, Mr. Pryor. At the podium, please.
Actually, two questions. The financial transactions and issues related to finances with Tylee, Ryan, and JJ started about or around when?
The financial transactions that I was tracking with Tylee, we got data into 2018, but my charts are indicative of January of 2019.
Okay. And then the marriage and the time they lived together in Hawaii, Chad and Lori, started when?
So they got married November 5th of 2019.
Okay. And they lived in Hawaii together until when?
Until she was arrested, I believe,
In January.
in January,
So 2 months.
2 months.
And the financial transactions prior to that went back at least a year and a half.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. Nothing else, Judge. Thank you.
All right, that'll conclude the testimony then of Mr. Douglas. Is he going to be recalled by either side?
Your Honor, at this point, he can be released from the state subpoena.
Okay, that'll conclude your testimony then, Mr. Douglas. Thank you for appearing. You can go ahead and step down, and if there are any exhibits on the bench, I'll have the bailiff grab those. I don't know if there are. Okay. The state ready to call its next witness.
Yes, Your Honor.
Who will that be?
The state will call Melanie Gibb.
Very well.
The testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing.
All right, before we commence with testimony, Ms. Gibb, please make sure to answer all of the questions verbally so we make a good record. Try to avoid talking at the same time as any attorney questioning you. And I am going to inquire now that you're under oath. Have you reviewed or watched any of this trial since it started on the court's live stream?
No.
Have you talked to anyone else about testimony they gave in this trial so far? All right, with that in mind, then, Ms. Blake, if you'd like to inquire on direct, you may.
Thank you. Would you please state your name and spell it for the record?
Melanie Gibb, Melanie Gibb.
Miss Gibb, do you know an individual named Chad Daybell?
I do.
Do you recall approximately when you met him?
I believe it was the summer of 2017.
Do you recall where you met him?
I met him at a get together that was like a camping environment.
Did you talk to him at that event?
I did.
Did you stay in close contact with him after that?
No,
Do you recall meeting an individual named Lori Vallow?
yes.
How did you meet her?
I met her in a church building where I was given a class and she was in the audience.
Do you recall approximately when that would have been?
I believe October 2018.
And do you recall when you met her, who approached whom?
She approached me.
When you first met her, did you end up striking up a friendship?
Yes,
And did you stay in pretty consistent contact with her, at least initially after meeting her?
yes,
Do you recall going to an event with Miss Vallow towards the end of October of 2018?
yes.
Do you recall when that was?
It was in October. I would say about a few weeks after I met Lori. And yes, we went to St. George, Utah.
Do you recall why you went to St. George, Utah?
We went for a conference.
Did anyone else travel with you and Lori to that conference?
Yes.
And do you recall who?
I can't remember their names. I think there was 6 of us, 5 or 6 of us.
Did you all travel together in the same vehicle?
Yes,
When you got there to the conference, do you recall if Mr. Daybell was there?
yes.
What was he doing there, if you know?
He was selling his books and giving a talk.
Did you approach him at any point?
Yeah, we talked.
Were you present when, or let me back up. Did you observe Mr. Daybell and Miss Vallow together?
Yes,
Do you know if that was the first time they had met?
yes, it was.
Were you part of introducing them?
I was, we walked into the building together, and I can't remember if I introduced her or if she introduced herself. I can't recall.
And when you say we walked into the building, is that referring to you and Lori?
Me and Lori and several other women.
And Mr. Daybell or Chad Daybell was already present?
Correct.
Throughout the conference, did you see Mr. Daybell again?
Yes,
Did you have an opportunity to observe Lori and Chad together?
I did.
What observations, if any, did you make?
They communicated a lot, and they were very interested in communicating about the things that they were learning and talking about. Seemed to be friendly.
And when you say they were communicating a lot, did you see them engaged in conversation together?
I did.
Did it appear to be deep conversation?
Yes,
Did they appear to be focused on each other?
yes.
Was there anything else about it that caught your attention?
They seemed to be attracted to each other. That caught my attention.
And at the time that you're there in October, do you know if Lori Vallow was married?
Yes, she was.
Had you ever met her husband at that point?
I had.
And who was her husband?
Charles Vallow.
Do you know if Chad Daybell was married at that point?
Yes, I do, and he was.
And do you know who his wife was?
Tammy Daybell.
Had you ever met Tammy?
No.
After that conference, did you travel back to Arizona with Lori?
I did.
Do you recall sometime after the conference talking to her about what she and Chad discussed?
Yes.
What were some of the things she shared with you?
He shared with her, according to what she shared with me, that
Your Honor, if I may respond.
Grounds to the objection? Ms. Blake, you may respond.
Your Honor, it's a statement of a party opponent as well as a charged co-conspirator.
All right, the court does find that's an exception to the hearsay rule that applies here, so the witness can answer the question. Objections overruled.
And do you recall the question?
yes. She said that they talked about multiple lives, and I believe she talked about, how many lives that she had lived on this earth, and that she indeed was married to someone named Moroni in a previous life. Those kind of conversations. Yeah.
And prior to meeting Chad Daybell, did Lori ever talk about multiple probations before that or multiple lives?
She did.
So she had some interest in that subject matter already.
Yes.
But when you talked to her about her conversation with Chad at that conference, she told you Chad gave her some additional information.
That's right.
Did she say anything regarding what Chad had told her about she and Chad?
That they had been married in previous probations.
Did Lori seem receptive of that information?
She did.
And we talked about you'd met Charles before, correct?
That's right.
Had you ever met Lori's children?
Yes,
And specifically, did you ever meet Tylee Ryan?
I did.
Did you ever meet JJ Vallow?
I did.
Do you recall where you met them?
In Lori's house.
Did you have an opportunity to observe Lori with her children?
I did.
What observations, if any, did you make about her and Tylee?
They had a difficult relationship. They didn't necessarily get along very well.
And what about Lori and JJ?
I could tell she had a lot of affection for him, but he was autistic and he seemed to be very busy for her.
We talked a little bit about, you met Lori in October of 2018. And initially, how often did you two have contact?
In the beginning, it was almost daily, with the exception probably of a day or two a week. And that was probably for maybe about a month or two.
Do you recall approximately when the contact wasn't as frequent or what was going on at that time?
Yes, it was after January when she started to move around. She moved multiple times, so I couldn't keep in contact with her.
And that would be January of 2019?
Correct.
And to be clear, she wasn't moving around to avoid contact with you,
Right.
but just as she moved around,
Right.
you'd lose track of her?
Well, we wouldn't see each other. Yeah.
Did you still talk to her on the phone?
Yes.
And after that first conference in October, do you recall the next time that you saw Chad Daybell?
The next month, November 2018, he came down for a conference in Arizona.
When he came down to Arizona, did his wife come with him?
No,
And at that conference in October, did you ever see his wife Tammy there?
no.
When he came down, so he came down to a conference in November in Arizona.
That's right.
Was Lori present for that conference?
Yes.
Outside of the conference, did you see him at any other gathering?
Yes, at her house.
And when you say her house, is that Lori?
That's right.
Was her house in Arizona at the time?
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about the gathering?
So the one at her house was a small group of people met before the conference. And so there was, I don't know, maybe 20 people there. And so Lori and her friends were there.
Did you have an opportunity to observe Lori and Chad together at that meeting or the gathering at her house?
Yes.
What observations did you make?
They talked often with each other. They seemed to be very interested in each other.
Did Lori at any time tell you anything about she and Chad when he was down there in Arizona?
Yes, she told me that they had been married before in previous probations.
Is that when she first shared that information with you?
I believe she shared it with me in St. George. So it's between St. George and November, she shared it.
Did she talk about going to the temple with Chad?
She did.
What did she tell you about that?
She told me that they were going to be resealed again like they had been in previous lives together.
And did she tell you that they in fact had gone to the temple?
Yes,
And that was in November, about a month after meeting each other.
that's right.
And she told you the purpose of that was so they could be sealed together again.
That's right.
At that time, was Charles still alive?
Yes,
And was Tammy still alive?
yes.
Was Charles present at the gathering at her house?
No,
Do you know where he was, or did you learn where he was?
he was out of town.
Do you know what Chad did for a living?
He was a sexton and he wrote books.
With regard to his books, had you ever read any of his books?
Yes,
Do you know if Lori had read any of his books?
yes,
Did she seem interested in his books?
yes.
When Chad was there in November, do you know where he stayed?
He stayed at Lori's house.
And Charles was not there.
Correct.
Did anyone else stay at her house, if you know?
Yes, there were multiple people there.
Were there any other men there?
I don't know if her brother was there, but nobody else that I know of.
And when you say her brother, do you know which brother you're referring to?
Alex.
Did you ever meet any of Lori's other brothers or her other brother?
I don't think so.
Did Lori ever talk to you about her conversations with Chad?
Yes,
Do you know, did Lori ever share with you if she turned to Chad for advice?
she did.
And we talked a little bit about the multiple lives or multiple probations already, correct?
Yes.
At some point, did Chad or Lori share more information about that with you?
Yes.
And which one of them?
They both did.
Do you know which one of them seemed to have the most understanding regarding multiple probations?
Yes, Lori would often call Chad and Chad would give her the information and then she would come back and share it with me and her other friends.
And when she would share the information, would she tell you she got that from Chad?
Yeah.
At some point, did Chad or Lori talk to you about the concept of light and dark?
Yes.
Do you recall who talked to you about that?
Lori shared it with me.
Did she tell you where she got that information from?
She got it from Chad.
What did she share with you about the concept of light and dark?
So if someone was light, they had made contracts with Jesus Christ before they came here. And if they were dark, they had made contracts and promises with Satan. And it was a different scale level of how dark or light they were.
So it was a decision before they came here to Earth?
Yes.
Contract?
Initially, yes.
And then with regard to the multiple probations, as you learned more about that, what did Lori share with you regarding multiple probations?
That people lived multiple times. And then she would find out, she would try to find out like when that was.
And was there some kind of a rating system or a system to easily identify if someone was light or dark or what level they were?
She would ask him and he would somehow find out. And he would find out, how many times they'd been on this planet or any other planets, I guess. And he would just find that out by asking questions the way he did. And then she would share it with us.
And the he you're referring to, is that Chad?
Yes.
At some point, were people designated with a number and then either an L or a D?
Correct.
Where would those designations originate?
From Chad.
And if someone was designated a D, did that stand for dark?
Correct.
And the L was for light?
Correct.
At some point, did Lori also share with you that she believed she had a mission here on Earth?
Yes.
What did she share with you she believed her mission to be?
She felt that it was her mission to gather women to the 144,000, and that she would be the leader of it. At some point, she thought she was going to lead that.
And when we talk about the 144,000, what's that in reference to? Could you explain a little bit?
Yes, it's a biblical explanation for a certain amount of people that would go out and gather Israel in the last days and have the power and authority to do that.
So gathering people in the end times.
Correct.
Do you know where Lori got the idea or the belief that she was meant to be one of the leaders or help gather?
I think she got it from herself.
Do you know if did she ever tell you if she talked to Chad about that?
She did.
What did she tell you in relation to that, if you recall?
Well, she shared with him what she believed she was, which was the gatherer of that. And then he agreed that she was. And so he, told her that that's what her mission was.
Do you know if Lori was telling other people about light and dark and multiple probations as well?
She was.
Do you know some of the other individuals she shared that with?
Yes. Sulema, Serena, Nicole, and Christina, and Melanie, and just maybe a few other people that are not as significant.
Did she also share these ideas with Alex?
Yes.
Do you know if Chad ever shared these ideas with any of those individuals? If I may respond.
Okay, and I'll note on the record, it didn't pick up on the microphone. It's an objection based on lack of foundation. Ms. Blake, response.
Your Honor, I specifically ask if she knows. I'm asking her personal knowledge.
All right, well, she can answer the question if she knows, but not necessarily go into what she knows, because I do think there's no foundation at this point for what.
Do you know if Chad ever shared those teachings or beliefs with any of those individuals?
Yes.
And did he?
Yes.
Were you present?
Yes.
And again, when Lori would tell you these things, she would explain she received the information from Chad.
Yes.
And we talked about that gathering in November at Lori's house. Were some of these things talked about then?
Yes.
Was Chad present?
Yes.
Was Lori present?
Yes.
Were they both talking about these ideas?
Yes.
Had you heard of these concepts before?
Yes.
Had you heard of them in the way that Chad was teaching them?
No.
At the time, were you open to learning more about these things?
Yes.
Did Lori or Chad ever talk to you about if a person could switch from being light to dark or vice versa?
Yes.
What did they tell you regarding that?
That they might be light, for example, and then some maybe evil entity could enter them and then they would become dark.
So a light person could become dark.
That's right.
When they, and I say they, do you recall if it was Lori or Chad that would tell you these things?
She would tell me.
And would she tell you where she received the information?
Yes. She went to Chad with it.
Thank you. Do you recall when Lori first started talking to you about people becoming dark?
I would say sometime between January and February of 2019.
Do you recall the first person she talked to you about becoming dark? The first specific person?
Yes, it was Charles Fallow.
Did she tell you where she received that information?
Yes, she received it from Chad.
At some point, did she talk to you more about what it meant if the evil spirit came in, like where the actual person went?
So when a dark spirit would take over, the original spirit of the person would go into the spirit world.
And that's what she originally told you?
That's right.
And did she tell you she received that information from Chad?
Yes.
So was your understanding the body of that person was still alive?
Correct.
It just had a different dark spirit in it now?
Correct.
What did Lori originally talk to you about? Was there a way to do something to help that person?
She would try to do like a casting out of an evil spirit. and try to convince the spirit to, the evil spirit to leave.
Do you know where she got the concept of casting from?
I believe she got it from energy work.
At some point, did you learn if Charles had been designated a different name?
Yes,
What was that name?
Ned Snyder.
Do you know where that name came from?
Chad told that to Lori.
At some point, had Lori talked to you about her having a dream regarding Charles?
Yes.
What had she told you?
She said that when it was after Christmas and he was out of town, I believe he went to Texas and he took JJ. And she had a dream during that time that they were not going to come back, that they were going to get in a car accident. And that's what she saw.
And that they would be Charles and JJ?
Correct.
Did she believe Charles was going to be killed in that accident?
She did.
Was Charles killed in a car accident?
No.
Was it sometime after that that he was labeled dark?
Yes.
Judge, how about some foundation?
Your Honor, it's a question to her personal knowledge. I guess I can rephrase.
Go ahead, Ms. Blake. Thank you.
At some point, did you learn or did Lori tell you if he was labeled dark once he did not pass away in that accident?
Yes.
And again, Judge, if I could have some time, date, place.
If you'd like to lay additional foundation, you may, Ms. Blake.
Do you recall approximately when Lori told you or when you learned Charles was not killed in an accident?
January 2019.
And do you recall approximately, I think you've already said, but do you recall approximately when you were told Charles was dark?
It was, I would say, weeks after that.
And that designation came from Chad.
Correct.
And then we started talking a little bit about the idea of casting.
Right.
Did you ever participate in any castings?
I did.
Can you tell me a little bit about what would happen at the casting?
So Lori and a few of her friends would stand in a circle and then feel like they had the power and authority to cast out the evil spirit by trying to use words, I guess, like an energy work to be able to convince them to leave and hoping that the evil spirit would leave.
So would some of the individuals say a prayer?
Yeah.
Would
Mhm.
some of the individuals talk about sending spiritual weapons or something of that nature?
Yes.
Was the person that the casting was being done on physically present?
No.
Was anyone physically touching, doing anything to, in this case, Charles?
No.
Do you recall, did you participate in the castings for Charles?
Yes.
At any point, did Lori tell you whether or not the casting was successful?
Yes.
And what did she share with you?
She would say that Ned had left, and then shortly after, she would say somebody else got in, another entity.
Do you know who told her that information or where she got it from?
Yes, she got it from Chad.
And did she tell you that?
Yes.
At some point, did you learn what would happen to the body if the casting was actually successful?
She would say that the body was supposed to die if the evil spirit left.
So in Charles' case, Ned's out and a new spirit's in.
Correct.
Do you know if there were additional castings
Yes.
in relation to Charles, I should say?
Yes.
Did you participate in any additional castings?
Yes.
Do you know if at any point the next entity or spirit was cast out of Charles, according to Lori?
Yes.
And was it?
According to her, it was
And did she tell you where she received that information?
from Chad.
And then what happened in relation to Charles when that next entity was removed, according to Lori?
Nothing happened to Charles,
Did a new entity come in?
according to her.
And Did she tell you where she learned that from?
Yes,
And-
Chad.
Was Chad ever present for any of the castings?
Yes,
Were there castings done on other individuals besides Charles that you know of?
yes.
And who were some of those individuals?
Brandon Boudreaux was one that I know of.
And did you participate in a casting on Brandon Boudreaux?
I don't know if I said anything. I was there when they did it.
Do you know if Chad was present at that one?
Yes, he was.
And who was Brandon Boudreaux?
He was Lori's niece's, which her name is Melanie's husband.
Had you met Brandon?
Yes,
At any point, did you learn if Brandon had been designated as dark?
yes,
And had he?
according to her.
Did she tell you where she received that information?
Yes, from Chad.
Do you know if any castings were ever done on Tammy Daybell?
Yes,
Were you present for them that you recall?
I don't recall.
Do you know if castings were done on Tylee or JJ?
Not that I know of.
You were not involved in any if they were?
I don't recall any of that.
And the castings in relation to Charles, do you recall approximately what period of time those were occurring?
So sometime between January and February 2019 up until I don't know, probably before he died.
And was your understanding that if the casting was successful, the body would naturally expire?
Yes,
Were you ever told that there would be violence done to the body?
never.
Were there other individuals that were involved in the castings besides you?
Yes,
Did some of them seem to have more involvement?
yes.
And do you recall who seemed to be more involved in the castings?
Lori and Sulema seem to know the most about it.
And the casting that we talked about Chad being present for, do you recall where that would have occurred?
Yes,
Where was that?
that was in Arizona.
Are you aware when Charles Vallow was killed?
Yes,
Do you recall approximately when that was?
July 11th, 2019.
So this would have been subsequent to the castings taking place?
Yes, right, shortly after.
At some point, did you start to believe or believe that Charles may be possessed?
To some level, yes.
And how many times had you met Charles?
Just a handful times.
Would you say you knew him very well?
No, I didn't know him very well.
Is it fair to say most of the information you had about Charles came from Lori?
Yes,
Do you recall sometime in July staying at Lori's residence?
I do.
And do you recall her asking you to leave at some point?
Yes.
Why did she tell you you needed to leave?
So I woke up early in the morning and she told me I needed to leave because Charles was going to be coming down. He's driving in from Texas and that he was going to kill her.
Did she tell you anything that she was going to do, any precautionary steps she was going to take?
I believe she said that Alex was going to be there to help protect her.
Did you have an opportunity to observe Alex and Lori together?
Yes,
How would you describe their relationship or your observations?
A close brother and sister relationship.
Anything about it seems strange to you?
No, seemed normal to me.
Just close.
Yeah, really close.
And you talked about her saying Alex was going to come to protect her.
Yeah.
At any point, did you learn if someone had designated Alex as Lori's protector?
Yes.
What did you learn about that?
So as Chad would share with Lori that his mission in life, according to what he learned, was to protect Lori. That was why he came here.
So Chad had designated Alex as Lori's protector,
That's right.
and Lori was going to have Alex stay to protect her from Charles.
I believe so.
Did you ever hear Charles threaten her?
No.
Were you present when Charles was killed?
No.
At some point later, did you talk to Lori about that?
Yes.
What did she share with you about the killing of Charles?
She told me that he came in from Texas and that they were arguing, and she said he put his cell phone in the car and she grabbed it, ran in the house. He was really upset with her. They were standing around the kitchen. He was threatening her. Tylee had a bat and she was trying to protect her mom or herself, I'm not sure. And then Charles and Alex got in a physical fight, and then Alex went to the bedroom to get his gun to defend himself.
And was it your understanding, or were you told that Alex then shot and killed Charles?
That's what that's what she told me.
And did you also talk to Alex about what had happened?
Yes.
And do you recall what he shared with you?
I believe he shared the same story. I don't remember all the detail to it, but it was the same story.
Do you recall how close in time it was after Charles' death that you talked to Lori and or Alex?
It felt like about 4 days afterwards.
When you talked to Lori and Alex, were they together?
Well, at first I talked to her on the telephone, so I don't know if he was there or not.
And then later when you talked to Alex, was Lori present?
I don't know if it was the first time I saw her or not. It could have been. It could have been the next time. I'm not really sure.
But at some point around 4 days later, you talked to both Lori and Alex.
Well, for sure her, but I can't remember when I talked to him. Yeah.
Thank you for
Yeah.
clarifying that.
Yeah.
When you talked to Lori, it's just 4 days later, any sign of sadness?
No,
Any sign of grief?
no,
How did she seem?
happy.
When you talked to Alex, any sign of remorse?
A little thoughtful, a little unsure of himself.
At some point after Charles is shot and killed, did you see Chad Daybell again?
Yes.
Do you recall approximately how long after?
So it must have been a couple of weeks after Charles's death. He was in Arizona at Lori's house.
So just a couple weeks after Charles' death, Chad Daybell's down in that house.
Correct.
Do you know at that time if Tammy Daybell was still alive?
She was.
Do you know where Chad stayed when he was back down in Arizona?
I believe it was Lori's house.
Did you have an opportunity to observe he and Lori together?
Yes.
What observations did you make?
They seemed super excited to be together. They were standing, talking to several of us at the kitchen table, and they're standing side by side and, excited to share, their future plans together.
Any sign of grief from Chad?
No.
And you talked about they were excited to share their future plans together.
Yeah.
So Chad and Lori were planning a future together?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And Tammy was still alive?
Yes.
And Judge, I'm just looking at the time here. It's almost 10. I don't know if the court wants to take a break at this point.
I
Or
was
keep going.
thinking anytime between now and 10:15 or whenever you feel like is a logical break point is fine.
I think this may be a logical break point.
Okay, let's go ahead and take our mid-morning recess then. And it's right about 10, so we will resume right back about 10:30 with further testimony.
All rise, please.
was that he had no idea any of this stuff was going on either before or after the child's death. Those are not mutually exclusive, and you can assert a defense of accident without forging any kind of connection to Joseph's defense of ignorance. So you cannot say that the choices that she made with regard to Jennifer affected Joseph or vice versa, because you're trying to make a connection between two separate things that never touch each other. Ignorance and accident are two totally separate types of defense. So to the extent that there are specific allegations of things that Ms. Moll could have done that would have benefited Jennifer, objecting to testimony, some of which was non-responsive testimony that might have come out at trial, the choice to not pursue a defensive alibi when there is a legitimate dispute in the evidence about what that alibi might have been, and Jennifer had already made statements saying that she was the one who performed the acts that caused the child's injury. Whether that was a valuable strategic choice, none of those things actually adversely affected Ms. Moll's representation of Jennifer. I know we dispute that, but the facts remain they didn't. If anything, they hurt both clients equally. I mean, the counselor's discussion that both of them talked about killing the child, that was both of them. It wasn't Jennifer about browbeat Joseph into agreeing to this idea. They were having a conversation. And again, that was non-responsive testimony. So we're several layers deep into some strategic thinking. So I would submit that there was no actual conflict, and even though the question of the professional rules and waiver is an interesting one, I don't know that the court actually has to reach it to affirm the convictions here.
So do you dispute the description of the seizure potentially being a result of a head trauma that potentially was outside of the timeline when she was home?
I don't dispute that there was a potential for it, which opens the avenue to making that argument, but I don't know that it's an argument that tracked much of the other evidence. There was some dispute about that evidence. There was also some dispute about whether that trauma would have been the thing that actually killed her rather than a contributing factor.
So was there any evidence in the record as to the cause of that trauma?
Well, you have Jennifer's own statement that she leaned the child up against a sink and hit her in the back as a life-saving attempt.
To the extent somebody believed that there was a seizure that was a result of trauma, was there any evidence as to what preceding the moment of this, supposed resuscitation effort, was there any evidence about what the cause of that trauma was?
To my mind, no. There was a discussion that it could have occurred up to an hour before, but that was also a very hypothetical discussion. It wasn't concrete testimony that it did occur an hour before. That was just a possibility.
No, I understand. I'm just trying to get it. When we talk about actual conflict,
yes.
I'm just, okay.
And when we talk about reasonable doubt, you don't have to have concrete, crystal clear proof that it 100% happened when she wasn't there.
Correct.
You just have to have enough to create a reasonable doubt.
That's
right?
exactly right, which makes it a tactical decision as to whether or not I'm going to deviate from the course of total innocence that it met in looking at Joseph, not Jennifer, deviate from the course of total innocence that I've maintained up at this point, change horses in midstream, 2 or 3 weeks into trial, and now assert this idea that it was Joseph and not Jennifer that might have caused that. That is strategic thinking. That is strategic considerations. And Ms. Mull testified that she didn't want to pursue that, again, because it was inconsistent with the defenses they made all the way through this case. And also, because of the disputes in the evidence and because neither of the Rosenbaums was willing to point the finger at each other, there really wouldn't have been anything to support that aside from speculation. To the extent that we are looking back at whether there was an adverse effect on the representation, I don't believe that gets us there. So with that, again, this trial is full of several things that go down separate but parallel paths, and that also addresses the question of justification versus accident. I do want to spend just a moment on that, although I agree that the conflict is the primary thing we're talking about today. The idea that Ms. Mull was ineffective for failing to request a jury charge on justification, which is what this argument actually is, requires 3 conclusions from the court. First, that accident was not applicable in this situation at all, leaving justification as the sole defense that could reasonably be pursued. Second, if it was the sole defense.
Why does it have to mean accident and apply as, as opposed to being an alternative defense?
Because in the context of ineffective assistance, the entire hook of the deficient performance argument is that a trial court is required to charge on the sole defense. And the assertion that Ms. Rosenbaum is raising is that justification was her sole defense, and thus Ms. Mull was ineffective not to request that jury instruction. Our position is it wasn't the sole defense. They could have argued it. But the very questions that the court was asking of Ms. Merchant earlier illustrate, and her responses even, illustrate that there were different options that could have been pursued as defense. This isn't a sole defense situation.
Can you briefly touch on whether justification legally could have fit the facts of this case? This version of justification.
So even, that's actually an interesting question, because the type of justification that's being argued is based on a person's need to render medical care. There's not actually any case law that I've been able to find saying that that would apply to justify the actions in this case. That it is the catch-all provision of the criminal justification statute, which then references a primarily civil statute talking about rendering medical care, I think presumably to insulate doctors and care providers from the actions they do while saving somebody's life. So I don't know that the court has to answer the question, but the state doesn't concede that that type of justification would even apply here.
But let's presume that it does.
Okay.
Often when we're presented with a claim that you should have sought justification instead of, accident or I wasn't there, we say, well, even if there was slight evidence to support it, such that the trial court would have been obligated to give it if you requested it, it clearly wasn't deficient because it's completely inconsistent with the defense you were trying to make, and it undercuts your better defense, and so, a reasonable lawyer wouldn't do that. It seems to me that framed the way that it's been framed here, it isn't inconsistent really at all with an accident theory. Like those could peacefully coexist, right?
I wouldn't say they could peacefully coexist. You can always raise, as we learned from McClure and Pennington, it's never really a good idea, but you can raise a pair of defenses that are inconsistent with each other and let a jury decide.
Sure, but my question is, why were they actually inconsistent? It may be that justification didn't add a whole lot, but it's not, I was in fear for my life and I shot this guy while simultaneously trying to argue I wasn't there. This was an accident and I was trying to save her life. Those do seem to overlap a fair bit.
So to directly answer the question, the fact that those overlap a little bit mean the justification wasn't the sole defense. So on the question of ineffective assistance.
So let's put the sole defense thing to the side for a second. Does this type of justification require criminality?
Yes, and that's the other part of this question, of the equation here. Justification excuses criminal conduct when there's a really good reason for doing it. That, in plain English, that's what justification
Otherwise,
does.
criminal conduct becomes not criminal.
Exactly.
Under certain prescribed circumstances.
That's correct. Accident absolves conduct when there's no criminal intent at all. So
to get this defense, do you have to admit that you're doing something criminal?
well, it comes
For
into...
the purposes of the defense, at
For the
least.
purposes of the defense, I would suggest yes, despite McClure and Pennington.
I think that's a very hard position to maintain post-McClure.
Which is exactly why I don't think the court actually has to get there, because they are two equally applicable defenses, which means it's not ineffective to choose one over the other. Again, separate but parallel tracks. However, I do think that at the end of the day, the choice that they made of an accident to pursue was something they were somewhat boxed into from Jennifer's initial statement to police. And so it's not unreasonable to put all of your eggs into that basket and pursue the accident theory, particularly because that's exactly what Jennifer always said is what happened. Notwithstanding the fact that there is absolutely no evidence in the record at all that the child was choking on a piece of chicken. There was nothing in the room, there was nothing in her throat, there was nothing in her stomach to support that that had any basis in fact, but that was the story they were stuck with. That's why Ms. Moll said that this was a ridiculous defense, but it was the defense she had, and it's not ineffective for her to pursue that. And
good timing, counsel.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you both for the fine arguments. We will have you a decision as soon as possible. We will now stand adjourned until the next session of oral arguments in May.
All right.
Discuss the case as it's been presented thus far in onesies and twosies back there. As you're waiting on us, remember that it would be a violation for you to recap or otherwise handicap the testimony, that you can only consider it when the appropriate time is given by the court and the court tells you how to begin that particular process. So that's that part of the admonition. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, do not go to any third-party sites. Do not go into any blogs or any other places to augment your understanding. The only thing you can consider, as you know, is in the four walls of this courtroom. So please do not seek any outside knowledge. Remember, if anybody should try and approach you about this particular case, either through social media or through third-party sources or just people that are interested, remember, you would need to let myself and Sergeant Ingram know immediately if somebody were to try and talk with you about this case or talk about this case inside your presence and hearing. Don't go by and visit any of the scenes that may be depicted in this particular matter. And also, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience, that you've continued to give us thus far and will continue to give us as you consider this particular matter. So, ladies and gentlemen, unless you have any other ministerial inquiry of me, I'll go ahead and recess you all until tomorrow for 12:30. We'll start around 1 o'clock, and we will see where the afternoon leads us at that point in time, okay? All right, all rise. Jack's already. No, it needs to stay on the record. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Our jury has left us. All right, counsel, so tomorrow, 12:30, we'll pick up where we left off. And we'll just continue and see how far we get. And we can then talk about next week, the week of the 22nd, okay? All right, anything I need to take up now?
Your Honor, it's at 12 o'clock. Report time to start at 12:30.
For tomorrow?
Okay.
Remember, Ms. Love, I got other things I got to do. I got Veterans Court tomorrow, okay? I told you that. So, but I will be down here and available. I'll come down for 12:30 in case we need to take up anything. So I would ask that you all would be here for 12:30. So if you do need to take up anything, we'll have that 30 minutes to do so, okay? All right, is there anything else I need to take up at this point in time with you all? Sir, Mr. Steele.
There will be, and I assume it's just, sorry, I assume it's the targeted objections, but Walter Murphy's original interview is not redacted. The state gave us a transcript that is not usable. And the only thing redacted is the exculpatory statement when Mr. Walter Murphy, which you excluded already, said that, you know, I can get killed for this, but it doesn't involve Jeffrey Williams.
But remember I told you yesterday that you were welcome, but you have a differing opinion than Mr. Short does, and you may get into that particular issue.
I do, and I appreciate
And,
that.
and I haven't forgot, and I said that yesterday, so.
And I appreciate that. This is a different issue. The state only redacted Walter Murphy saying, yeah, I was scared, I could be scared, I could be killed. That has nothing to do with Jeffrey Williams. The only thing that they redacted is this has nothing to do with Jeffrey Williams. So the whole thing should be out because under the case law you have, which I have to refresh my memory, just remember it was an M case, but since it doesn't apply to any guilty consciousness, and Mr. Murphy did cooperate with the state again a couple months later in August and in February, and then testified that July 17th should not be discussed at all. In addition to that, I was told that the prosecutor questioning Detective Gaither is going to ask questions like, did you ask Mr. Murphy whether he had a gun or whether Mr. Murphy was around this person? Those are hearsay. It doesn't matter what the detective asked. It's the answer of Mr. Murphy that would be inconsistent if it is inconsistent. So I just don't want to waste the time. That's what I was trying to do this morning. It's just a lot of time consumption. So I just want to alert you that I'm objecting again to everything being played the way I think the state is trying to play it, but that July 15, 2015 recorded interview should not, in my opinion, it has no relevance except he was threatened, he felt threatened rather, and then he said it was not due to Jeffrey. So why is that coming in when he cooperated the next two times, which are what the case law says? That's my objection.
All right, State, what do you have to say?
Response to that. We addressed this yesterday, Your Honor, and it was relating to specifically the search. Mr. Steele does not quite have it right as the court ruled. It was the search of Jeffrey Williams' home that the court excluded. That was the only thing that the court told us that we should not and could not get into. The court has never, ever ruled, as Mr. Steele may have mistakenly thought, and said that the court or the state could not get into the points with which Ms. Hilton confronted Mr. Murphy as it related to the fears he expressed regarding telling police officers what happened. As a matter of fact, on the stand, Mr. Murphy testified that he didn't remember what he said in the July 15th interview in 2015, but he knows the only thing he was afraid of was going to jail because he had been false flagging as a blood. He made that assertion numerous times on the record, and that has never been the subject of a point of contention that the court has addressed, that we would not be allowed to get into, because the court, as a matter of fact, looked at it, analyzing it under a party's bias, a witness's bias, or motive, or leaning towards a particular party. And I think that statute is 24-6-6-22, I believe we brought it to the court.
Yes.
I'll look it up and make certain. But we definitely confronted Mr. Murphy with those statements. He says, I could get killed just by being here. I could get killed for looking at this video. You all pulled up. He flatly denied that. He said, when you all pulled up and that officer pulled up his mask, that alone could get me killed. Throughout his interview in July of 2015, he talked about the fact that he could get killed because he was cooperating with the police. We never said that he was talking or pointing to Jeffrey Williams, so that assertion is actually kind of confusing an issue that is not a real issue. We're not trying to say that Jeffrey Williams threatened Walter Murphy. We're saying that Walter Murphy had a reason for acting the way that he did, and that the jury is entitled to see his asserted reasons that he then denied on the stand in the context of the reasons being stated.
All right.
And it's not 24-6-22. So 622, 17. (622) and one other statute. Just one moment.
622 what? 24 dash?
24-6-622.
Okay.
And we argued this very point 2 weeks ago when we talked about other redactions, and the court ruled that we were allowed to get into this because it was a matter that he...
Yeah, you just can't talk about just general fear. It has to be related to one of those
And he
different...
talks about it in the...
All right. I did rule upon that already. All right, anything else, sir?
I filed a motion in limine. We had the conversations. We had all the cases. The court had read them beforehand. I gave you all the 8 cases, I believe. And then the state asked one question. If it was Miss Hilton, the Honorable Miss Hilton, said that he didn't remember saying that. Asked another question about fear. I asked approach. You said move on. Sustain the objection. I don't know how it's now going to be played, and I'm objecting to it. The court has ruled, and it is character evidence, and they took out it. The matter is bad enough putting it in, but the state has redacted. I'm objecting. The only part, after he said I could get killed for this, he said, but this has nothing to do with Jeffrey. I don't know how. Somehow that's the only part that is redacted. In addition, the state did not redact and take out all of the information about the search. And I've said it now 4 times. And I will. I'm putting everyone on notice. And I'm not saying you're going to grant it, because I heard what you said earlier. You're not going to grant a mistrial. But this is out of control. This is an out of control part by the state. They constantly are ignoring the court's rulings. So I'm objecting. I put it on the record now, and then whatever happens tomorrow happens. I understand you could deny it. And then
Well, I hope it won't come up. It won't come up because you do need to trim out that, and I trim out those particular things about the search of Mr. Williams' home. Well then, here's the thing. Why don't you all get together and make sure that it's done, and you see it.
So, Mr. Steele and I have had a number of conversations about taking out the part of the search.
Okay, let's break it down.
So the search of the house.
Has the issue involving Mr. Williams' home been taken out?
So yes.
Yes? All or no?
Yes, but the version that we're going to use is very similar to what we saw yesterday. So what the state intends to do, which is the transcript we sent over this morning, is the highlighted area, which is from 2:49 p.m. and 51 seconds to 2:49 p.m. and 51 seconds to 2:50 p.m. and 11 seconds is the area in which Miss Gaither talks to Walter about the search. That is out. We've highlighted that area. We've redacted it. We will redact it by muting that portion of the interview. The only other part that Mr. Steele is talking about is what we discussed yesterday, which is the mentioning that Duke, which is a co-conspirator, was at the house at the time of the search. You ruled that could come in, that Duke was at the house, not that can't come in. So the only thing about the search that is there in the July 2015 interview, because I want to be real clear, is that Duke was present. Now, if we need to take out the word search, we can take out the word search, but that Duke was present at Mr. Williams' home on July 15th when DK was arrested is very relevant because that's another co-conspirator who was at the house at the time in which another co-conspirator, Walter Murphy, was arrested.
Well, take out the word search.
So we can take out the word
Take out
search.
Walter Murphy being at the house, Duke being at the house, yes, it would be relevant. So, all right. What else is, now, are you going to include back in what Mr. Steele said about the exculpatory portion of him, Walter Murphy saying, but this has nothing to do with Jeffrey?
That's not exclude. I don't know what Mr. Steele is referencing, so I would need to know a timestamp. I need to know which tape he's referencing, but it's because the only thing that the state is redacting from the July 2015 interview is 2:49 p.m. and 51 seconds to 2 p.m. and 2:50 p.m. and 11 seconds.
So is
So
that
outside of that, the state does not intend to redact anything else.
So is that in?
Yes.
So the only thing
based
that's
on
being
this.
redacted is the 2:49 to 2:50 and 11 seconds?
Yes, and then we're going to find this one word search by Duke's name.
We are definitely taking that one word out. Yeah.
So I need to find where that is in this transcript. But outside of that, everything else is in.
Can you caucus or gather with Mr. Steele and just make sure that that is done, please?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Steele, you're going to give me.
The court also ordered, pursuant to my motion, the state actually conceded it, that they would not be getting in that same day, that there was a search of a studio, a record studio. Has nothing to do with Mr. Williams. Has nothing to do.
I don't recall that.
Well,
Was that part of your?
Motion, yes, and you ruling, and I would have to ask the matter.
Well, no, here's the thing. I don't think your motion limiting Williams number 50 has that particularity in it.
It was before this. We did it weeks ago. I raised this issue weeks ago. And
You're
I
right.
asked about
Can you
this.
tell me what?
I don't.
Can you tell me what motion was in, sir? I mean, I'm not saying you didn't.
I know, I'm not challenging.
No. I'm just saying, can you tell me what?
Can I sit down for a second?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, where's he?
So on a motion to set bond, you asked us to file a motion, written motion. We have an agreement.
All right, court is calling 2021 CR 7016, State of Texas versus Lee Andrew Martinez. Could I have parties announced for the record for the state
Hank Wilkins for the state, Your Honor.
defense?
Warren Wolf and Mr. Martinez.
All right, so and you're Mr. Martinez?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, a bond forfeiture was entered because you did not show for court on December 10th, 2021. I'm sorry, yes, 2021. So where has your client been?
In San Antonio.
All right, so what are you all stating for a bond?
We agreed to a $2,000 bond, Your Honor.
There were two cases, $2,000 in each.
All right, I only have one.
I gave.
No, I have a,
She's got the other.
okay. Oh.
9488, 9487.
All right, and the court is also calling 9488. So do you want to present any information about your client's ability to make bond?
Judge, he is working, he's.
I mean, you want to call him as a witness, or are you all going to just do a proffer?
I'll just profit.
All right, any objection to the defense doing a proffer?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, yes.
He has a job. He was working before he was picked up. And that's another matter. But the point is, he's working. He can make the bond. His girlfriend's on the outside and she'll help him. And he needs to get back to work. That job is waiting for him.
All right, could you raise your right hand for me, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You can lower your hand, state your name for the record.
Lee Andrew Martinez.
All right. Are you employed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Where have you been since 2021?
I've been at the same residence that is provided, 405623 Randolph Boulevard.
All right. And what do you do for work?
I'm a car salesman.
Okay. Did you not know about this setting?
At the time that it happened, I was unaware. And when I got the information in the mail, it was past due. So I missed the court date.
All right, so where have you been for 3 years?
I've been at that address.
No, I mean, with regards to this case, were you arrested? Did somebody find you? What happened?
I got arrested. That's how I'm here now.
On another matter.
Oh. When you say arrested on another matter, what is this other matter?
Family violence assault.
And who is the complainant in that?
Was that?
I've talked with her, Judge.
No, what's her name?
Was that?
Lizette what?
De La Rosa.
How do you spell the first name?
Lizeette.
Last name?
Delarosa.
And what is her relationship to you?
She's my girlfriend.
And is this the person you're currently or you want to live with?
We're not living together. I live with my mother.
All right. So what's the bond on that case?
$5,000, Your Honor.
All right. So what's his criminal history?
He does have a, excuse me, Judge, I printed this out.
No problem.
He has a possession of marijuana from 2008. That's a felony. And in 2014, he had a DWI with child under 15. I'm sorry, did I say 2014 for the second one, for the DWI? And an obstructing a highway in 2013, Your Honor.
All right, this is what the court is going to do. In each case, the court will grant a bond. Bond will be set at $6,000. In each case, there's to be no contact with Lizette De La Rosa. There's going to be partial GPS for work only. There'll be random UAs, waive fees. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And when is this set? When is our? All right. Kevin Young. Frederico Ojeda. Who's here on Frederico Ojeda? Come forward. No, I forgot to read your CV. All right, what's happening with this case?
Setting, I do have discovery. I'm going to supplement my request to ask for written disclosures. There was some disclosures regarding the officers that we asked him because of that.
All right, state on this case, he says he's going to ask for disclosures.
Sorry, Judge.
On this case, Frederico Ojeda,
Yes, sir.
defense counsel said he's going to ask for disclosures.
Okay.
Also, Ms. Ferguson, on this one, can we have a 45-day reset for discovery? And counsel, if you'll let the state know which officers you're requesting disclosure so they can work on that.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you for dressing appropriately for court. Once you sign the reset form, you are excused. You're welcome. Number, what page is he on? All right, thank you. And what date did we set Kim for? Lee? All right, thank you. Jerry Torres. Who's here for Jerry Torres? Okay. All right, today is, you're on this side, counsel.
Sorry, Judge.
No problem. Today is plea deadline date. Where are we?
We haven't reached a plea bargain, Judge.
Okay. State, how long do you expect this trial to last?
Maybe 2 or 3 days.
All right, Ms. Ferguson, this is criminal trial division, 2 to 3 days, jury trial.
Excuse me.
You sound ill.
I'm actually getting better. I don't have much of a voice, Judge.
I was like, are you all still gonna have your fiesta?
Of course.
I would love to be there. I can't, I'm gonna be with mom.
Oh, well, that's good. That's
Yeah.
better though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I always enjoy the fiesta. Last year I was able to make it. You guys changed dates on me.
Oh,
Did
well,
y'all
they
change
changed
dates so I wouldn't
They
appear?
know, they changed dates of Fiesta.
No, they did.
It's late.
Yeah.
I guess they're concerned with Lent.
Ah.
Yeah. You know, we might be able to have a dispositive motion to suppress. Do you think we could have it next week?
I will not be here next week,
Okay.
but state, on this case, it's a DWI.
Yes, it is, Judge.
He's saying that the motion to suppress will be dispositive.
So he's gonna plea if it's not granted?
Yeah, that's what he's saying.
Okay, Judge.
But he's saying next week, I'm not gonna be here and I know you all have other things. So, Norma, they want to have a motion to suppress. Is there a day that you all have impact?
There is, Judge.
Okay. Can you put it for a motion to suppress then with impact maybe, or either you can do it with me?
If, who's here next week, Judge?
Oh, they're not gonna be able to do it next week.
Okay.
It's Angelini.
We're gonna be in trial next week.
Yes.
To have Judge. I think impact, we don't have it until the 20th of May, is that correct? Or is that family violence?
Yeah, it's you all.
So May 20th?
Between.
All right. All right, thank you for dressing appropriately for court. I appreciate that. Once you sign the reset form, you are excused.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Hope you feel better.
Thank you, Judge.
Who is here on Renee Cantu?
I'll call him right now.
All right,
Yeah.
then that's gonna have to be taken up in the afternoon.
Yes, ma'am.
Tuska Hamrick. And Mr. Stevens, don't worry, I'm gonna get your motion.
Thank you, Your
All
Honor.
right, court is calling 2022 CR 8246, State of Texas versus Tuska Hamrick. Can I have parties announced for the record for the state?
Sorry. Hank Wilkins for the state, Your Honor.
Defense,
Brian Kimbrough from Mr. Hamilton.
probation, this is an application.
Oh, Judge, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's Jason Garahan for the state.
All right, thank you. All right, are you Mr. Hamrick?
Yes, ma'am.
Counsel, have you received all the discovery?
I have your.
State will find that this, court will find that the state is in compliance with discovery. Mr. Hamrick, did you review the application for deferred adjudication and community supervision
Yes, Your Honor.
with your attorney? Did you sign it?
Yes, Your Honor.
Did you review what's entitled true bill of indictment with your attorney? Did you understand it?
Yes, Your Honor.
Counsel, do you waive the reading of the indictment?
I do, Your Honor.
State, are you proceeding on the indictment as presented?
Yes, we are. We're proceeding on each count, Your Honor.
Okay.
Which they're all the same.
So it's 1, 2, and 3?
And 4.
And
There should
4.
be another page, Judge.
All right. Mr. Hamrick, did you review the document entitled Court Admonishments and Defendants Waivers and Affidavit of Admonitions with your attorney? Did you understand it? Did you sign it in all the appropriate places?
Yes, Your Honor.
Did you understand you're charged with assault with a peace officer or judge in counts 1, 2, 3, and 4? Those are second-degree felonies. Range of punishment is anywhere from 2 to 20 years in prison and up to a $10,000 fine. Did you understand?
Yes, Your Honor.
If you have a plea bargaining agreement with the state, court does not have to follow your plea. If for any reason the court does not follow your plea and gives you more than you bargained for, the fact that you entered a plea will not be used against you and you will be allowed to withdraw your plea. Did you understand?
Yes, Your Honor.
Did you understand you have a right to jury trial, a right for you or your attorney to cross-examine and confront any witnesses the state would call in the right to remain silent?
Yes, Your Honor.
Did you understand by entering this plea, you were giving up those rights?
Yes, Your Honor.
Did you intend to give up those rights and enter into a plea in this case?
Yes, Your Honor.
Did you understand if the court were to grant your application for deferred adjudication? If for any reason your deferred adjudication were revoked, court could find you guilty and sentence you up to 20 years in each count and up to a $10,000 fine.
Yes, Your Honor.
Counsel, has your client been able to provide you with any defenses?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you believe he has a rational as well as a factual understanding of the charges against him?
He does.
Do you believe he's currently competent and was legally sane at the time of the offense?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Hamrick, has anyone threatened you, coerced you, or placed you in fear to get you to enter the plea?
No, Your Honor.
Anyone promised you anything other than the plea?
No, Your Honor.
Are you satisfied with the way you've been represented?
Yes, Your Honor.
Are you a U.S. citizen?
Yes, Your Honor.
Court will find that defendant has knowingly and voluntarily waived his right to jury trial. Did you review the plea bargain page with your attorney? Did you understand it?
Yes, Your Honor.
According to the plea, there's a $1,000 fine. State is recommending deferred adjudication in each count and an anger management course. Did you understand that to be the plea?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
State?
Yes, Your Honor.
Did you review the waiver of appeal paragraph with your attorney? Did you understand it? Did you sign it in both places?
Yes, Your Honor.
Did you understand by signing that you're waiving your right to appeal? The only items that can be appealed are written pretrial motions that have been filed, heard, and ruled upon by the court. Did you understand?
Yes, Your Honor.
Counsel, are there any such motions?
No, Your Honor.
Outside the agreement, the state is requesting that your community supervision be for a term of 10 years. There be a TAP evaluation, 200 hours of community service restitution, and no contact with the complainants. Did you understand?
Yes, Your Honor.
Did you understand those are recommendations from the state and the court does not have to follow those recommendations?
Yes, Your Honor.
Then to count 1, how do you plead?
No contest.
Count 2,
No contest.
count 3,
No contest.
count 4.
No contest.
State any evidence.
Yes, Your Honor. Each of the counts, state exhibit number 1 with attachments.
Any objection?
No objection.
And state, are the complainants aware?
Yes.
All right, thank you. You may continue to confer.
Thank you.
Did you review the document entitled Waiver and Consent to Stipulation of Testimony and Stipulations with your attorney? Did you understand it? Did you sign it in all the appropriate places?
Yes, Your Honor.
Again, did you understand You have a right to a jury trial, a right for you or your attorney to cross-examine and confront any witnesses and the right to remain silent.
Yes, sure.
Did you understand that today the state will be presenting evidence in the form of witnesses' statements and police reports, but most importantly, there'll be no live testimony. Did you understand?
Yes, sure.
Court will find that defendant has knowingly and voluntarily waived and consented to stipulation of testimony and stipulations. Court will accept into evidence states exhibits 1 and attachments and review the same. All right, after reviewing states exhibits 1 and attachments, the court will find there is sufficient evidence to find you guilty. Court will defer finding the guilty as you've applied for deferred adjudication. Are you asking to proceed with sentencing?
Yes, Your Honor.
Anything you wish to say on behalf of your client?
Yes, Your Honor, I'd ask the court to file a plea bargain. Hamrick is 24 years old. He has no criminal record. He's a resident of Oklahoma. He lives with his parents in McCurtain County.
How do you spell that?
McCurtain County. And I would ask that his supervision be transferred to McCurtain County. I've spoken to his family. This is not characteristic of Hamrick. He is employed, works with his family, never been in trouble. And I believe he can successfully complete probation.
All right. So who is Marco Antonio Gonzalez to you?
I don't personally know him. It was,
Were you intoxicated? Because I don't understand. According to this, you were asking him to get out of the vehicle.
I was intoxicated at the time. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, the court will sentence you to $1,000 fine that will be probated. 10 years deferred adjudication. Counts 1, 2, 3, and 4 are to run concurrent. There should be a transfer to McCurtain County in Oklahoma. You're not transferred until they accept the transfer. Regular reporting by Zoom or in person. Regular random UAs. Probation, will they accept a transfer while he's in custody or no? All right, there should be no contact with M. Butler, C. Heron, Herron, S. Gatan, Sgatten, S. Shurtleff, that's Shurtleff. Laura Hernandez. Arizona Garza. Marco Antonio Gonzalez. And 4620 Thousand Oaks. And that's San Antonio, Texas, 78233. TAP evaluation in custody, probation. If it's discovered that they won't accept him till he's released, then he can be released. Follow TAP recs. Proof of employment within 30 days. There should be no employment as a home health care provider or with minors. Field visits, one time per month for 3 months. And an anger management course. Probation, is there anything else he needs? All right, is there anything else you need from the court? All right, did you review the document entitled Trial Court Certification of Defendant's Rights to Appeal with your attorney? Did you understand it and did you sign it?
Yes, Your Honor.
Because this is a plea bargaining agreement, because I followed your plea bargaining agreement, and because you waive your right to appeal, you do not have the court's permission to appeal. Do you understand?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, we can go off the record. So here's the thing. You're gonna have to make better decisions. Otherwise, you're gonna find yourself in and out of custody. It appears that you have a drug or alcohol problem. If there are issues, just let probation know. If you feel like they're not addressing it, you can always come back to court, okay?
Sure.
All right, thank you. All right, this is the last case we're gonna take up before everybody else comes back in the afternoon. John Stephen Meyer. Yes, 1:30. Hello.
Hi, Your Honor.
Oh, hi. Okay, just 1 second. Your co-counsel sent to the court an email with the motions. And let me just see if I can find them.
And I have copies if you need them, Judge.
Oh, that will make it quicker.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, if you got it, thank you.
All right, we're gonna go on the record in 2024 CR 0170. The court is in receipt of the defense's notice of appeal with regards to defendant's motion for a new trial. That will be denied.
Your Honor, can I take it that you accept this as presentment of the motion for new trial?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, then with regards to the defendant's motion for bail pending determination of a motion for new trial and pending appeal, we'll just do it with regards to pending appeal. Defense?
Your Honor, I'd like to make a proffer if I could.
Yes.
The court knows a good deal about Mr. Meyer, of course. So the standard under 44.04 C is he is eligible for bond pending appeal in light of the court's judgment, of course, yesterday.
Yes.
And the two questions are, is there good cause to believe he would not appear? And or that he's likely to commit another crime.
All right, let me just stop you right now. State, do you think that if the court were to give bond to Mr. Meyer, he would fail to appear? And I can tell both parties, the court is inclined to place him on GPS.
I think with full house arrest GPS, I think that would take care of it, Judge.
Okay, so let's start with this. So where we are now is if he has employment,
He's
court-
retired, Your Honor. I don't mean to interrupt the court.
All
He's
right.
retired.
so it will be full GPS and counsel. If you wish for him to have a window off of GPS where he can take care of personal affairs or whatever he needs to do, you need to give the court a detailed list of what time he wants and what windows of time. So for now, we know he's going to be on full GPS. All right, so next question has to do with the amount of bond. And counsel, what are you requesting for the amount of bond?
It's my understanding, Judge, and I tried to check earlier and I couldn't today, that he was on a personal bond for this case.
Mhm.
He appeared multiple times. I mean, just between the time he was convicted, of course, and the time of sentencing, he knew he was facing up to 20 years in prison. So I think he's a great candidate for personal bond.
All right, so here's my question. Was he previously on a personal bond?
No, Your Honor, on this cause, it was $40,000, and on the pending cause, it was $50,000. So we'd asked for $200,000, Your Honor.
That's too
Okay.
high, Your Honor.
No, here's the thing. Everyone, just address me. So, Mr. Meyer, I have some questions to ask you about this bond issue. Could you raise your right hand for me?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you solemnly swear and affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you can lower your hand, state your name for the record.
John Meyer.
All right. So how much do you receive in your retirement?
I don't really have a retirement. I have a house that I own and rent out in Hawaii, and my wife and I use that to pay our bills.
All right. So what are your bills? How much?
My mortgage on the house I live in is about $3,200. And I've been paying money out of my retirement. I've been using some of my retirement to
Okay,
pay
so
my
Mr.
bills.
Meyer, I'm sure your attorney will tell you this. Just listen to my questions because I don't want to go into other things.
Yes, Your Honor.
And just answer my question. So you say your mortgage is $3,200 a month. What other bills do you have?
Electric, water.
What's the average cost of that for the utilities?
Probably about 800.
Okay. Other than the mortgage and the utilities, anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Groceries, what's the average per month?
500 maybe.
All right. So and how much do you receive in income?
About 3,500.
Okay. And that's the only income you receive?
I do renovations on houses. I haven't been doing many recently.
Okay. All right, any other questions?
No questions, Your Honor.
All right, so state, are you still asking for $200,000?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, defense, what are you requesting for bond? The court is not going to grant him a PR bond.
$50,000, Your Honor.
All right, so this is what the court will do. The court will set your bond at 65,000. There's to be full GPS. I'll ask that the fees be waived. But it's a third-party contract with the county. They're probably going to send me a notation back that that fees can't be waived. There is to be regular random UAs and probation. Since probation is sort of held in abeyance till this appeal is pending, are you all able to still do UAs or no? All right. So there's going to be regular random UAs, and that's going to be through pretrial services. And there is to be sober support meetings. And those are to be 2 times per week. And my understanding is they have those sober support meetings by Zoom. All right, and Ms. Ferguson. State, I know that you may feel as though Mr. Meyer may or may not appear, but those concerns seems to be addressed with the GPS, but this is what we will do. Norma, reset this case for 30 days and you'll need to appear in 30 days. If you do not, something else will happen. You understand?
Yes, Your Honor.
Judge, can we do no contact with the same folks from the stipulations?
Who are the no contact persons? Just 1 second. Let me grab the different file. Okay, let me see if I have that file. I don't have the trial file.
Your Honor, we would agree, if it makes it any easier, that the same people that were named yesterday would have no contact with.
All right, you understand that?
Yes,
So
Your Honor.
you'd have no contact with the previous persons that were entered into the motion
Absolutely.
for probation. You understand?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right,
Your Honor, can I speak to that then? Can I speak to the rest of the court's
Yes.
judgment? We think the amount of bond is fair, but I would think that the full GPS is unnecessary. This man, if that's a concern that he's gonna run off, where does that come from?
all right. Now, so here's the thing. What I stated earlier with regards to full GPS. He's retired. That's what I'm being told. If he wants time to handle affairs, or if he decides to get employment, all he needs to do, or you counsel need to do, is to come to court with timeframes for the court. But I'm not just going to give him free rein on GPS.
You know, could we have GPS with a curfew?
Once you all come back to court with a list of what time he would like to be out and about and for what reasons, the court will make a ruling at that time. But for now, it's full GPS. So that's all you have to give me. All right?
We'll be back with that. Thank you, Judge.
All right, thank you. No, that's going to be, he's appealed, so he can't go. Yeah. For ISF. All right, and I'm gonna add the no contact orders in here.
Your Honor, I know that sometimes it takes a while to get a monitor.
Oh, it doesn't take that long. They'll have a monitor for him soon.
Could the court allow him to release him today without the monitor, but he gets the monitor as soon as it's available?
No, they'll have those monitors available. If for some reason it's not available, and let's say 3 weeks, although I think they'll have it available by next week, then you just come back to the court and ask Ms. Ferguson to put him on the docket and I'll address it.
We will do that, Your Honor. And
All right.
I'm not trying to argue with the court, but he's been a very responsible person, Judge. I know that if you were allow him to release him until he can get a monitor, he'll get it as soon as possible.
Okay. All right, is there anything else?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. And I've added the parties in the motion. All right, so we're on recess.
Judge, can I, real quick on my guy, can he come back and would I be excused? Because I have federal court like all afternoon.
No, I mean, yeah, see y'all at 1:30. All right, thank you. Everyone, I'm here, but we're on lunch break.
Right now on Morning News Now, a short-lived showdown in the Senate. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas spared from impeachment after Democrats quickly dismissed charges over his handling of the migrant crisis.
What we saw today was a microcosm of this impeachment since day one. Hallowed, frivolous, political.
He's probably the least effective and I think most dangerous in terms of his policy implementations of any cabinet secretary in the history of the United States.
And in the House, Speaker Mike Johnson facing the fallout within his own party over foreign aid. We'll bring you the latest from both chambers. Also, campus concerns. Columbia University's president grilled on Capitol Hill in the wake of recent anti-Semitic incidents on school grounds. The tense testimony raising questions about free speech. Plus, it's a hidden ingredient that could be harming your health. Researchers finding high levels of pesticides in your produce. What you need to know before your next trip to the grocery store. And a shared struggle. A majority of college students say they're feeling emotional stress. But one group says earning a degree doesn't have to take a mental toll. More on the problem and possible solutions. I promise there really are solutions, which is so important when we have that conversation. Good morning. I'm Savannah Sellers. Thanks for joining me on the day before Friday. Joe's off this morning. We're going to get started with that impeachment showdown on Capitol Hill. The Senate quickly dismissed 2 articles of impeachment against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, brought by House Republicans over his handling of the U.S. border. Senate Republicans slammed the upper chamber's decision not to have a trial.
Are we about to set a precedent that the allegation of a felony is not a high crime and misdemeanor?
That is not an appropriate parliamentary inquiry.
You don't have to be Mensa material to know that it's
The
not
senator
only
will state
a
his
high
motion.
crime and misdemeanor, it is a felony.
For more, we are joined by NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale. Ali, good morning. So walk us through what happened on those impeachment votes. Tell us more.
It was a little bit wild there last afternoon, Savannah, because what we saw on the Senate floor is the Senate do what it was always going to do, which is dispense with these articles of impeachment. It was just the question of how they ultimately ended up doing that. Senator Chuck Schumer really kicking down the 2 legs of this chair, first going after the first article of impeachment, which is willful and systemic refusal to comply with the law. Schumer arguing that that was not constitutional. His colleagues, all Democrats and 1 Republican who voted present, agreeing with him. That toppled Article 1. And then Article 2 went down in the same fashion. What took a while was the Republicans trying to make various motions to adjourn or prolong this. Ultimately, those efforts failed, and it left both leaders of the Senate on the Republican and Democratic side warning of the precedent that this would set for 2 very different reasons. Watch.
To validate this gross abuse by the House would be a grave mistake and could set a dangerous precedent for the future.
This process must not be abused. It must not be short-circuited. History will not judge this moment well.
So certainly a lot of talk about precedent there. Of course, this was a really rare moment in the first place. The first time a cabinet secretary was impeached in about 150 years. The Senate doing, again, what we expected them to, which is motioning to dismiss this.
Absolutely. Ali, let's talk about another issue going on in the House. House Speaker Johnson's plans for foreign aid. He's facing a divided party, including members that want to oust him from his job. Johnson told members that they should expect to vote on separate aid bills for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan this weekend. A little confusing since Johnson himself had voted against Ukraine funding before he took the gavel 6 months ago. So what changed, and what is it going to take for this aid to pass? What do you expect to happen?
Namely, his title, Savannah. He is no longer just Congressman Mike Johnson. He is Speaker Mike Johnson. And I do think that that's a large part of what we're seeing here, especially as the majority of this House Republican conference does want to see the Congress push forward on this package of foreign aid. Now, it's a different fashion of doing it. Initially, the Senate had passed a supplemental aid package weeks ago that had all of these variety of aid pieces in it. Now, what Speaker Johnson is doing is basically just breaking them up. You get an up or down vote on Ukraine aid, you get an up or down vote on Israel aid, an up or down vote on Indo-Pacific aid. And then there's this fourth package that includes a lot of Republican priorities on combating foreign adversaries. There's things in there that Democrats like. I was talking to one congressman this morning on Way Too Early who said he loved the idea of how TikTok was being included in that. But then, of course, Democrats are also skeptical about whatever border provision is included in that. They're reading it very closely, but by and large, the expectation is that this will pass in bipartisan fashion. Here's something important to remember, though. Even though the plan is for up or down votes on all of these various aid pieces, they have to first get on to the actual business of voting for those. And in order to do that on the House floor, you have to vote for the rule. The rule is usually something that the majority party does by itself. That is not what we expect to happen today, and that could endanger Mike Johnson's job.
Yeah, let's talk more about the potential danger that his job is in. So actually, we understand in an effort to shore up support, Johnson met with former President Trump last week in Florida. Could that protect his job? And do Democrats want to work with Johnson, or in an election year, would they like to see more infighting within the Republican Party? Like, is this a good thing or a bad thing for Democrats? How does this play out?
First, on the Trump of it all, I think that what we saw between the speaker and the former president was more of a side hug than a full embrace. And it's not clear that it's done anything to dissuade Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is not just a chief ally of the former president, but right now the chief antagonist of the Speaker of the House. She said she's going to wait until after the foreign aid package to push any kind of motion to vacate. That means that today is a really important day in Congress, but certainly over the weekend as well. It's going to be difficult for people like us, Savannah, who are now going to have to compete with watching Congress and also listening to Taylor Swift's new album. I am just really stressed.
I was just waiting to say to you, happy new Taylor Swift album day, since I know you celebrate and observe. I love it. Ali Vitale covering so much, and in preparation for this album, it really is something. We appreciate it, Ali. Good to see you. Let's turn now to the House probe into allegations of anti-Semitism on college campuses. The president of Columbia University was the latest college official to testify before the Republican-led Committee on Education and the Workforce. NBC News senior Capitol Hill correspondent Garrett Haake has more.
Say